Hello everybody, my name is Poison Ducky and we're going to have another Tomb Kings replay on Total War Warhammer 2. So, I realize I'm going to have a lot of Tomb Kings gameplays in general because, like Turn I would suppose, if he's known for his Vampire Coast gameplays, I'd be very happy to be known for my Tomb Kings. Now, Tomb Kings is, I admit, I'm going to have a few too many replays, but you know what, they're my favorite faction. It's just, and I'm not going to have at least replay sent to me anytime soon, so I'll work with what I have. So I am getting ready. I'm practicing for tournament play. I want to get into it somehow. Maybe I'll join a Rubber Duck of Wars. Maybe I'll join like a Legend of Total Wars cheese kind of tournaments, but I definitely want to join one eventually. And I hear that Heir of Carthage is going to have a newcomers tournament soon. So I'm definitely going to join all these, at least looked into these tournaments, and I'm looking to refine my Tomb King play. Now this is me versus the Dawi, the metal midgets, the dwarves themselves, and I've always had a hard time in this matchup between the dwarves. Now why do I have a hard time? Dwarves are known for their onion. They have Thunderers. Thunderers is one of the best ranged units in the game for taking down large units. Now they're armored piercing, armored and shielded units. Like, Tomb Kings do not have the infantry to deal with dwarven infantry. The only armor-piercing unit we have in terms of infantry are the halberd units. Now, how do we deal with that? We send large units like Ushabti, Sphinxes, any huge chariot, anything to push through the lines. But here's a problem. If my opponent spreads out correctly and defends them with Slayers, it's extremely hard to break that layered defense force of armor and steel and make it into the Thunderers, because the objective, kill the Thunderers, I win. If he can kill my large units before I kill the Thunderers, he wins. So it's a race of who can take out the most important units first. Now let's start with the dwarf introduction. So he's going to have 2 units of Thunderers defended with 2 units of Slayers. Very standard stuff. If you can't, it's the bread and butter of the dwarven army with a front line of Longbeards. Now Longbeards with some miners with blasting charges in the front is a powerful force. Not something to be slept on. Now, the interesting pick by my opponent is 2 units of gyrocopters with brimstone guns. Now, these are pretty decent against the Tomb Kings, I would say. They have anti-large, pretty powerful projectiles, and Tomb Kings don't have too much that can deal with the gyrocopters, so it's a... If there was any matchup in which you do bring gyrocopters, which there's really not that many, I would pick it in the Tomb Kings matchup. Now, his lord is going to be the mighty Ungrim Iron Fist, a anti-large, unbreakable lord. Pretty good pick, and of course he's going to have the Runesmith with all the normal runes of negation, wrath and ruin, and let's see, what's the third one? Oh, he's bringing the Hammer of Courage. Okay, interesting that he brought that. So Rune of Oath and Steel and Wrath of Ruin. He didn't bring negation, interesting enough. Now over here in my army, I was so happy that I brought 1 unit of Carrion. Now Carrion destroy gyrocopters, so that'll be a very fantastic pick for me. And I'm going to have a front line of Tomb Guard. Now I just said that I don't have many armor-piercing infantry units. Tomb Guards are one of them. Not only do they not have that much armor, they don't have armor-piercing. But the main point of why I bring Tomb Guard in this matchup is because they will take a long time to die. A very long time die. They have pretty good melee defense at 42, so it's going to take, or 42. So it's going to take a while. They'll hold the line while I mash into the back line with my large units. So it's going to be a front line of Tomb Guard with some skeleton spearmen on the edges. I just want spearmen instead of swords, even though I know dwarves don't have large guys. It's because of the melee defense. They just last a while. Now my heavy hitters is going to be a Tomb Scorpion, mighty Tomb Scorpion. I love the look of this unit. It's just a cool guy. Along with a Necrotect, and I'm going to have not 1, but 2 Necrosphinxes. Not Necrosphinxes, sorry. I am just, man, I'm having brain farts today. Kemrian Warsphinxes. I would never bring Necrosphinxes to the fight against dwarves. Now, Kemrian Warsphinxes are anti-large, anti-infantry. Man, I'm just thinking about Kemrian, aren't I? Anti-infantry, armor-piercing, terror-causing monsters. If you bring 2 of these into a fight against the dwarves, it is such a hard, it's task to just bring them down, especially if you don't bring more than, you need to bring 4 Thunderers and maybe at least the Dragonback Slayers. But with those armies introduced, let's get into there. And of course, I do have one unit of Necropolis Knights to bring some flanking pressure. And this barrage of Brimstone guns are actually going to do some decent damage against Necropolis Knights. You don't expect them. I don't expect them in too many matchups, but luckily for me, I do bring the Carrion. The Carrion are going to deal with the Brimstone guns very efficiently. Now, it says they're winning in battle. Yeah, that's a lie. It's a 3 versus 18. The 18 models are going to just squash the Brimstone guns. It does have 100 armor, but I am going to use a spell here that increases the bonus versus large, and this Gyrocopter will be leaving the battlefield rather quickly. Now, my opponent's going to do something smart. He's going to bring the Gyrocopters over here into the firing line of the Thunderers, but I'm going to realize that, and I'm going to move back eventually. My front line is moving forward, and they're going to take some not Brimstone, but Satchel Charge Fire. Now watch this happen. The Thunderers are going to go at it, but I have shields on these Tomb Guards, so wasting your ammo a little bit, but here comes the brunt of his power. And there goes my Skeleton Boys. Skeleton Boys taking a lot of damage to explosive fire, but here comes the pushing of the Warsphinxes. Warsphinxes are just going to pound through the miners, go straight into the Longbeards, and my objective is to reach the Thunderers. Tomb Scorpion coming in too, breaking the front line as easily as that, and my opponent is going to be firing into my Sphinxes. Now, first unit of Thunderers have been compromised. Now, opponent here is going. He's a little slow in the micro, but the Slayers will be following pursuit. Here they come, and I need to get out of there. So it's a little chase, a cat and mouse. Do the Slayers reach my Sphinxes? And my Sphinxes need to get into the back line. Now, I'm going to just constantly cycle charge here, play them kind of like chariots, and give support to my Tomb Guards as need be. Now, unfortunately, it's my Necropolis Knights. I'm having such a hard time using these in a normal combat. I think I just have to cut them, but they get caught by the Slayers. The mass is just not great enough, and they couldn't stop the Thunderers with any luck. Now, he's going to use his Thunderer power and his Slayer power all for the Sphinxes, and it's going to be a mash. Now, the balance of power is strongly in my opponent's favor. I was kind of interested. I haven't lost that much yet. I only lost the Necros Serpents. It's like, well, that is a big, loss right here. Unfortunately, they just crumble to the dust. His units are getting, his front line is getting heavily compromised. Now, he's going to use a Wrath of Ruin to just reduce my speed overall and do a little bit of damage, but the Sphinx is just so powerful. Now, over here, I'm going to see if you noticed my Tomb King it's actually my Lord is a Tomb King. I have no Cetra, nothing special, but Tomb Kings on Sphinxes are very powerful. Now, why is this? It's because they have this armor ability called the Scorpion Armor. Once my HP is reduced below 50%, plus 22% damage resistance is a big damage reduction. Now, it's really hard to take down the Tomb King once that is there. And of course, if you understood earlier, I did bring the Necrotech. Now, the Necrotech does have a heal ability called, I believe it's Reconstruct. Necrotech, I believe in you. No, he has ability called Reconstruct, which heals my constructs, which I'm going to need for this other Khemrian Warsphinx that's not the Tomb King. But here, Ungern Ifist doing his job, trying to get his anti-large behind him, but here's the problem. He just gets swatted away like a fly. Effectively, he can't reach my constructs. Tomb Scorpion doing its job, getting into the thick of these Thunderers and Miners. And I love the animation. The animations of the Tomb Kings are just so fun. I love killing everything. Now, he's going to use all the ammunition out of one Brimstone gun, once the ammunition is spent, these are pretty useless units. They have a little bit of cycle charging potential to get some morale down, but my Carrion's going to come back and just deal with them with no problem. The other Brimstone gun is all the way over there. It is coming back. I will take that out with no problem. And of course, back in the front line, it's just Cycle Charge City with Khemrian Warsphinxes. These are the units that's going to bring me to victory. It's not the Tomb Guard. The Tomb Guard have held well, but are actually mostly crumbling. Like if in this little pocket, I summon the Ushabti into the Longbeard and Dwarf Warrior line. And they're just doing their job. They hold the line. They won't get many kills. They don't have armor piercing, but the Ushabti, along with this Tomb Scorpion, will do a number on them. Back here, it's just a lot of pressure. I don't think my opponent is pressuring me very well. The Thunderers have been pushed off his back unit. He's forgot about his back unit of Thunderers, actually, and the line of fire is obstructed. He's going to move him forward to try to shoot my units, and the Slayers are too slow. Slayers only having 42, I believe, speed. 40 speed, it's slower than I expected. 40 speed just cannot keep up with the speed of the 68 speed of the Kemrian Warsphinx combined with the high mass. Now just charging into here, it's just a warrior fest. Just clobbered, all these dwarves getting mushed to pieces by little cats and scorpions. Now the balance of power is still in my opponent's favor because I suppose the ammunition does count towards this balance of power. It's strange, but maybe Ungrim Iron Fist. Ungrim Iron Fist does like hard counter. If he gets any hits into my units, that's a hard counter. It's going to take a huge chunk. How much weapon damage? 430 armor piercing weapon damage. Insane. That's not even including the bonus versus large that he has. So I'm going to make sure that these units do not make any contact with him whatsoever, which is going to be very beneficial because if any fight between Ungrim and any of my large units, if Ungrim doesn't get swatted away, it is a loss. Now it's just going to be a little bit more just cycle charging. I realize that my opponent gets his Thunderers back into combat, and it's going to be a cycle charge fest along with the Tomb King. I believe this is the Tomb King one. Yes, it is. Got to make sure those Thunderers don't make it back into the battlefield because they are the biggest threat to my army. And I love the animation. Look at that. They can breathe magic, swatting away dwarves. Dwarves are just, if your opponent does it right, dwarves are a tough matchup for the Tomb Kings in my opinion. Well, maybe I'm just bad, but just the Thunderers, man. Thunderers hurt so much. And the second one here. And I believe that quickly makes the Thunderers rout. Yes, they're going to rout here, and they will no longer be useful in this battle. He's going to try to stop me with some Slayers, but Slayers are just get run over. He doesn't have Giant Slayers, a unit that's very needed because they have armor piercing, and normal Slayers just don't bring that. Look at this. Unfortunately, the Tomb Scorpion did get surrounded by Slayers and Miners and could not make it out, even with the amazing animation cancels that the Tomb Scorpion does. And honestly, the only army that I have left is some Carrion, the two Kemrian Warsphinxes, and one unit of Tomb Guard. And the Tomb Guard are just beat up. They have 733 kills. That's more than I expected, but they're beat up. 51 models, not much less. Well, look how many units the Dwarves still have. All beat up, albeit, but still a lot of units. Now, of course, I'm going to do the cycle charge, use the Tomb King's infantry as the hammer, and even though it's not a hammer and anvil, it's more like a hammer and spear. Or actually more an anvil and spear. And breaking past these units. Look at this. He can't get value. He cannot get his damage per second into my Kemrian Warsphinxes. And it's weird. The balance of power is still in my enemy's favor, even though he only has 180 units left. Kemrian Warsphinx, doing well. My Carrion actually has a chevron now. And all of the Brimstone guns are off the battlefield, which is quite nice. They just did not pay for themselves. Not very fantastic at what they do. Brimstone guns, while they are annoying, hard to deal with, all it took me was one unit of Carrion to completely shut down 2 units, which is a lot of money. Now, the curse is going to activate because the health did go below half for my Tomb King. Doing a decent amount of damage, but everybody knows that dwarves have magic resistance. Magic doesn't do amazing against them, unless you have like a Wind of Death or something like that. But just doing my job, getting these Thunderers out of the way. Now this could be seen as cheesy, having 3 monsters. I had 2 Sphinxes and a Scorpion. Could be seen as cheesy, but I think it's just the right to strat. Maybe I could have changed out the Scorpion for some chariots, I suppose. But chariots don't have armor piercing, which is a pretty big downside. And the last Tomb Guard are going to be falling here, as I use them as just my little anvil again and charge. Look at these little slayers. Getting run over by what few units they have left. And with that, my opponent has nothing left. Balance of power is still in his favor. I'm a little confused here. All he has is Ungrim and a Runesmith, and I'm just going to cycle charge these dwarves into oblivion. He has no way of catching me. He has no Thunderers to stop me, and that's why I say you should bring at least 4 Thunderers into the Tomb King matchup. And that's why I lose so often. But here we're going to speed it up. It's practically the end of the match. I will be cycle charging into the opponent dwarf, and it will be a pretty fun victory. The balance of power will be coming back into my favor as I go around my Tomb Guard unit, still holding on to this bare teeth. I'm going to use it, of course, go for the hammer and anvil, and it will be over for my opponent. Finally, the balance of power. It took the entire game to finally go in my favor, and Ungrim Iron Fist will be swatted like a fly by the Khemrian Warsphinxes. Nothing out of the ordinary. Now let's get into some unit efficiency. Alright, so Tomb Guard actually did a lot better than I expected. 41, 51, 73, 85 for that one that survived. Did rather well. I'm pretty happy with that. But obviously the main MVP of this match are the Khemrian Warsphinxes, just cycle charging over and over here. 2 chevrons out of that battle. And of course my Tomb King just doing so well. My magic didn't do fantastic. The Lich Priest just did some buffs overall. Necrotic did its job buffing and healing my Warsphinxes, and the skeletons holding the line were just great. I think the biggest weakness in my army was the Necropolis Knights. I'm having a hard time using them. They get stuck. They die very fast. I think I should switch these out for some either the Regiment Renowned Archers that have armor sundering, or maybe some more chariots for backline pressure. I'll experiment more on this build. Now, my opponent definitely needed to bring some Giant Slayers. Normal Slayers are not going to do it, and definitely bring more Thunderers and take out the Gyrocopters. They're just not going to do it. In fact, let's pull out a Turin here and see how do we beat the Tomb King build that I have. Now we'll do a custom battle. Let me make sure the unit are on large, and let's get into Dwarves, Dawi, and it's already empty. So I'm actually fine with using Ungrim Iron Fist. I like Ungrim Iron Fist. I don't think you really need his Axe of Dargo. In the Tomb King matchup, that is a lot of weapon damage, plus 32 bonus versus large too. That's fine. I'll bring a, Runesmith as well with all the runes, and let's get a front line. So I liked the blasting charges. So 3 of that was fine. My opponent did 3. And instead of bringing 5 Longbeards, let's just bring the Grumbling Guard and maybe 2 Longbeards with great weapons. You need to bring the Slayers. Where are the Dragonback Slayers? Now, the reason why you bring them is because they have the ability to slow. Minus 36% speed. You notice my opponent could not catch my Sphinxes. So bring the Dragonback Slayers, and if you're expecting large armored piercing large units, go for Giant Slayers, not normal Slayers. Normal Slayers, not going to cut it. So Giant Slayers and the Dragonback Slayers will do it. Now let's get 4 units of Thunderers. Now with that money left, let's see. We need to just have some, a unit to just hold the line per se. So let's say, I don't think we need this many Longbeards, so let's go just Dwarf Warriors. 2 Dwarf Warriors with great weapons, and maybe 3 units of normal Dwarf Warriors. So 2 blasting charges, 3 units of normal Dwarf Warriors, 2 great weapons with the Grumbling Guard in pursuit, the Dragonback Slayers, the Giant Slayers, and I think you have a pretty decent army right there. Now, you could experiment a little bit. Like, if I was playing this army, I would be a little memey and just take out a Thunder or 2 and get yourself an Iron Drix with Troll Hammer torpedoes, and maybe bring 1 Quarreler just in case. Quarrelers, they don't have the armor piercing, but I like Quarrelers a lot. So this could be this would be my variation, which would be a little bit more interesting, a little bit more fun. But If you want to go for just the normal standard set, go for the Thunderers. Thunderers are tried and tested good stuff. Well, I hope you liked the video, guys. Leave a like if you liked it and subscribe if you want more. I'll catch you guys later.